Immanuel's 135th day, a big celebration year, and as we know, we've had a very good brochure made up this year that shows the various events that will be happening during our 135th anniversary. We're planning a lot of special services, having some of the previous pastors or pastors' sons of Immanuel come back to the church for special services, which we think will be very interesting to everyone involved. When we're talking about anniversary, it happens that this week you've had two anniversaries. One was the 135th church, as well as the anniversary of your ministry here in Immanuel, having been 14 years on January 14th, I believe.
That's correct.
And it's certainly we're well aware of all the changes that have gone on in the 14 years that you've been here, and it strikes us that perhaps you'd like to tell us the most significant thing that has happened in your life as part of the ministry here in Immanuel in this last 14 years.
Well, I would say, Ted, that I see a significant increase in lay participation in the life of the church. I remember when I first came to the church council, when they were interviewing me, the board did have women present, but I understand it wasn't too long before that time that it was primarily a male-oriented board. And I also remember we did have people assisting in communion, but basically they were males, and now we have, of course, men and women serving, and this is good in terms of administration and also worship. I would say that the women have always been very, very active in the life of the church.
That's for sure.
If anything, I miss the fellowship we used to have, and this goes way back before I came to Immanuel of Men. And there is proposed in the new church the possibility of organizing a Lutheran Church men group in the local congregations. I would say that looking at lay ministry is one such change, and seeing the participation of women in various leadership roles as a change. I would also see significance, as we have had here at Immanuel, of ever since introducing the Lutheran Book of Worship in February of 1979, saying what is central to our life as we gather together, and to be sure our life together centered around Word and Sacrament is central every week. It's our high point of what happens here in our congregation. That since that time we have celebrated Holy Communion in addition to always having the Word preached. So I have noticed a piety and a devotion that's grown in the people's lives, and that's very encouraging for me as we're all nurtured by God's Word. So I would see a change there. I also see a change as far as the way in which we reach out to the community. In the past, we've always had our traditional programs, and while we still have a number of those in place, I see changes occurring within the last 5 years that are especially promising and also troubling. We just learned this last week that the Cub Scout group is no longer meeting, and that's the first time that we have ever had such a group not formulated here. Our Sunday church schools struggling on Sunday morning to continue to shape and mold the lives of children and youth. And yet, on the other hand, when we have had any kind of staff and outreach to the community throughout the week, we have many children that do come and young people that do come and participate. So we know that there are young people here. And of course, Immanuel's had a long tradition with the use of its gym and its beautiful facilities here to be able to be a servant to the community in that regard. So I see changes there. I don't know what you perceive from what I've been saying so far, Ted.
Well, I think that you're talking too of changes, and this is probably one of the things that comes to mind real quickly, is that there have been so many changes within the neighborhood, not just our neighborhood, but many other neighborhoods. And as we look at it, we wonder just what is the area of future growth in Immanuel within this area, and we can talk about some of the changes. We're certainly sorry to hear that the Cub Scout, which has been a long-standing group here, has been disbanded or moved, whatever it is. But with things like that happening, just where do you see the growth of Immanuel? Just not necessarily just within the community, but within our own membership also.
Right. Well, I would see one promising program, although we have not seen any of the people identify with the congregation, but Michelle Knapp, as you know, for the last 3 to 4 years has had a very effective program with mothers and very small children. It's called Together. I like to refer to it as the Moms and Tots program. And as a volunteer, she has been working with these new mothers and some of the fathers. And we do find them in the community, and we do try to relate to them through this special kind of outreach. And I think that's been very important, and that's a new development here. You wouldn't typically call that Sunday school, but it's certainly within a Christian atmosphere, and she has gotten volunteers from the congregation who have, been able to meet the people, and I have met many of the people myself at various kinds of gatherings.
Are the mothers very active in that too?
The mothers are there the whole time. It's not a babysitting situation in which the mothers are just leaving the children, but the mothers stay, and it's a morning out for many mothers who otherwise don't have identification with other young mothers. As you know, in the city, it's difficult to establish communities. For sure. And when you're in a small town, you do know your neighbors better than you're in the city. But I think that we, as Lyle Schaller put it back in 1981 in his very important report here at Immanuel, that if people can be open to witness to people who do come into our space and our place of hospitality, this Christian community, that this is a very significant way in which we can witness and invite people to become a part of the fellowship. And I still feel that continues on. I think that's a very, very strong accent here. Immanuel is a congregation that does care, and we have had evidence of this for all of the years of ministry I have known, and certainly Ted, you as a lifelong member here, see that tradition.
Oh yes,
and that's been very, very, very
been
important.
carried on over many, many years. That's
Right.
for sure. Just a little change of pace here, Pastor, and talking about neighborhood and changes. There's been a great change within our church itself now with the merger of 3 of the Lutheran bodies. I know that you feel very comfortable with this merger, and generally I think the lay membership too is quite pleased with the whole change and with the fact of getting together with other groups. Perhaps one of the areas, though, that looks like it could be a little bothersome is the typical power play, and I guess that's probably not so well known within the church as it is in business, but the typical power play where you have, as we have now, one larger group of Lutherans coming in with 2 other smaller groups, and somewhat there's that fear perhaps of the domination of the larger group over the 2 smaller groups. I'm certain that it will all work out well, but what is your feeling about this melding together of the 3 different denominations?
Well, this will be the first time, apart from the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod, with whom we still have not had official unity, in which the Lutherans in the United States will be one. And that is very historic and very unique. It was Muhlenberg's dream back in the early 18th century to have one church. And again, because we have had such a diverse background as Lutherans, it's been very difficult for that to have happened. Now we have roughly 5.3 million Lutherans throughout the United States, and through our mission throughout the world. We have many, many others. We are still the largest Protestant body throughout the world. In the United States, this puts us third as far as actual denominations, Protestant denominations. I would say that in that there would be strength to be sure that we are now working together and we are witnessing together. I feel that the ELCA is going to be strong for these reasons, and I'd just like to cite a few. We have a good new leader in Bishop Chilstrom, who is, I feel, a person who is able to bridge the tradition out of which many Lutherans have come, former Augustana, especially this congregation and its Swedish heritage and ancestry, and his sense of churchmanship as far as a united congregation of congregations witnessing and working together. I think his style of leadership will be important as the church now begins its pace. Attendant to that are the some 65 bishops who, in a sense, are the church's larger field of leadership, and they will be important in giving a sense of counsel and direction for the work of the church. And certainly the lay leaders who are elected to prominent positions, and a concern for the representation of women and minorities and persons of language other than English represented. One of our main concerns is also to work with other Christians and to continue the very important dialogue we've had with Roman Catholics, the Episcopalians, and other Christians, including many evangelicals. And as we have here in November at Immanuel, we hosted the very special Jewish-Lutheran dialogue. And that is a very unusual series of conversations that is also evident in Immanuel's history because of where we're located here on the north side of Chicago. I would just make a comment also about the fact that we do have a confessional stance as Lutherans. And if we are to make a witness in the United States, hopefully it would be with this in mind that this tradition would continue on through the Augsburg Confession, Small Catechism, and all the very historic books that we've known in the past. And for the ordinary person, remembering the Small Catechism, remembering the traditions out of which we come as Lutherans, all of this into the mainstream now as we together work. And then finally, I'd just like to say that I feel that we all have a new church if we really remember the promise of Christ, that Christ is always with us, and that Christ will always lead us into the future, no matter what the shape and design of the church is. And it does change, and we all change. But Christ has said, I am the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And how important to know that. So that is a response, Ted, to your question. It's with hope, I think.
And we are moving in the right track, that's for sure.
Yes, right.
Getting back now, Pastor, to your 14 years here, we've talked a bit about this as we recalled it, and you recalled the other day how it was such a bitter cold day when you and Barbara and the three children moved here. We remember, too, that your children seemed so small at that time, and as Tim and Catherine and John have grown, now they've all gone through college, and we really would like to know about their whereabouts. What is their present station in life, let's say?
Glad to share it. Thank you for asking the personal question. Yes, it was a cold day, and my wife and I remember full well when we moved from Harvey, where we were for 10 years, and prior to that, 4 years in Cicero. And we're warmly welcomed by young people and members of the congregation as well. I remember a somewhat humorous incident that I might want to just mention. For some reason, someone had lost the keys to the parsonage, and it had all been decorated, as you know, very nicely done. And we were trying to get in, and John Petrie was then the sexton. Well, colorful John decided to kick the door down, and as he was doing it, he said, "This is just like John Wayne." So anyway, our children are doing fine, and my wife, unfortunately, is not feeling well, is not able to be here this morning. And she is continuing her work as a wife and a mother, and also working as an office manager for a team of heart doctors in Evanston. Our son Tim returns home from Japan as a lay missionary in the end of February. And son John and daughter Catherine just graduated recently from college and are working and hoping to go on to further careers. So indeed, we have been enriched by the time spent here. And as the kids put it, we really hooked on to this building and this place.
Well, that's great, and we do thank you for sharing these thoughts and bringing us up to date with your family. We certainly appreciate your ministry here and look forward to a very good, productive future, and particularly in this year of our 135th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.